There are some creatures that, when first discovered, even scientists believed they couldn't possibly exist, not because they were rare, but because they looked so unusual that they were completely misunderstood. And if real things could be misinterpreted like that, what makes us so certain that today, we aren't looking at something real and calling it a myth without even realizing it? This may be one of the strangest creatures ever uncovered. Not because it was rare, but because from the very first glance, everything about it seemed off. Hallucigenia lived over 500 million years ago, in a time when life on Earth was still in its earliest stages. Its body was small and soft, yet along its back were long, sharp spines, like a natural row of defenses. Beneath it were tiny legs so thin they were almost invisible. But the most fascinating part isn't just how it looked, it's how we misunderstood it. When scientists first reconstructed this creature from fossils, they made a mistake they never expected. They placed it upside down. The spines that were meant to be on its back were mistaken for legs, and the actual legs were overlooked entirely. For years, textbooks showed Hallucigenia walking on sharp spikes, something that, in reality, could never happen. It took decades, along with better evidence and improved technology, for scientists to realize the truth. A real creature, clearly preserved in nature, had been completely misinterpreted, simply because it didn't resemble anything familiar. And that's the part worth thinking about. Hallucigenia was never a myth. It wasn't imagination. It was real, but because it was so different, we forced it to fit what we thought we understood, and in doing so, we got it entirely wrong. So if something that clearly existed could be misunderstood so completely, what makes us believe that today, with all our knowledge and technology, we always see things as they truly are? If this made you pause and think, leave a 1-inch the comments. If someone told you there was a creature that looked like it came from another world, you'd probably assume it was imagination. But what if that creature was real and had been discovered in fossils over 500 million years old? Opabinia is one of the strangest examples we've ever found. It lived in the same ancient seas as Hallucigenia, a time when life on Earth still seemed to be experimenting with forms that feel almost impossible today. This creature had 5 eyes, not 2 like anything we're familiar with. Extending from the front of its head was a long, flexible proboscis, used to grab food and bring it to its mouth. Its entire body plan doesn't resemble anything alive today. But what makes Opabinia truly unforgettable isn't just how it looked, it's how people reacted to it. When its fossil was first presented to the scientific community, the response wasn't awe, it was laughter. Many thought the structure was too absurd to be real. 5 eyes? A claw-like feeding appendage? It didn't fit any known pattern, and because it didn't fit, people assumed it must be wrong. That's the deeper issue. When something doesn't match what we already understand, our instinct isn't always curiosity. Sometimes, it's rejection. We question it. We dismiss it. We try to force it into something familiar, even if that means getting it wrong. Opabinia was never an alien. It never came from anywhere but this planet. But the way we reacted to it reveals something far more important. Maybe the world isn't too strange. Maybe our ability to understand it is more limited than we like to admit. So the real question is, what is truly strange? The creature itself, or the way we choose to see it? If Opabinia is the most unbelievable creature you've ever seen, comment 1. If you think humans are the ones misunderstanding the world, comment 2. Now take a look at these claws, nearly a meter long, curved, razor sharp. At first glance, they look like the perfect weapons built to tear through prey in seconds. If you saw something like that in the wild, your instinct would be simple: stay away. And that's exactly what scientists once believed. When the first fossils of Therizinosaurus were discovered, no one fully understood what they were looking at. Those enormous claws led researchers to assume it must have been a terrifying predator. Some even thought the fossils belonged to an entirely different kind of creature. The logic seemed obvious. With weapons like that, it had to be a killer. But as more evidence came to light, the picture began to change. Its teeth, its body structure, the way it likely moved all pointed in the opposite direction. Therizinosaurus wasn't a predator at all. It was a plant eater. Those massive claws weren't designed to attack, but likely to pull down branches, defend itself, or help it forage for food. And that's where this becomes truly thought-provoking. Because this wasn't a small mistake. We didn't just misinterpret a detail, we misjudged its entire nature. We saw something that looked dangerous, and assumed it was dangerous. But reality told a different story. Therizinosaurus is a powerful reminder that appearances can deceive us not just in nature, but in how we interpret the world itself. A creature that looked like a monster but didn't live like one. And if that could happen in the past, how many things today are we still misunderstanding in the same way? We didn't just get its shape wrong, we got its nature wrong. Imagine this for a moment. You're walking through a damp, silent forest. The only sound is the crunch of dry leaves beneath your feet. And then right in front of you, something over 6 feet long slowly crawls across your path. No roar, no fangs, but just the sight of it is enough to freeze you in place. That was Arthropleura, one of the largest arthropods to ever exist on Earth. Its long, segmented body looked like a massive millipede, but at a scale the human mind isn't used to processing. It lived over 300 million years ago, in ancient forests where oxygen levels were much higher than today, allowing creatures like this to grow to sizes that now seem almost impossible. But here's what makes it even more interesting. Arthropleura wasn't a predator. There's no clear evidence that it hunted other animals. Most research suggests it fed on decaying plants or fallen leaves, making it, in reality, relatively harmless. And yet, just looking at it, our brain reacts as if we're facing something dangerous. And that's the key point. Human fear doesn't always come from real danger. Sometimes, it comes from what feels wrong, something unfamiliar, something that doesn't fit our expectations. The bigger and stranger something appears, the easier it is for us to label it as a monster, even if its true nature is completely harmless. Arthropleura didn't need to hunt to be terrifying. Its size and appearance did that on their own. So if something as simple as size can cause us to completely misjudge a living creature, how many other things out there are we misunderstanding in the exact same way? If just seeing this creature in real life would make you run instantly, comment 1. After everything we've seen so far, you might think the most unsettling creatures are the ones that look completely alien. But sometimes what confuses us the most isn't what's unfamiliar. It's what feels familiar, just not quite right. Deinotherium is a perfect example. At first glance, it looks like an elephant. Massive body, heavy steps, a presence that feels recognizable. But then you notice one detail that shifts everything. Its tusks don't curve upward like modern elephants. They curve downward like 2 enormous hooks pointing toward the ground. With that single difference is enough to make the entire image feel off. Deinotherium lived millions of years ago, roaming across parts of Africa and Europe. It wasn't some unknown mystery. In fact, it was closely related to animals we already understand. But that's exactly what makes it so fascinating. Because when we see something completely unfamiliar, we accept that we don't understand it. But when something looks almost familiar, we assume we do even when we don't. Deinotherium doesn't completely break the patterns in our mind, it just bends them slightly. And that small distortion forces the brain to correct what it sees sometimes by ignoring or misinterpreting what's actually there. And that's the most thought-provoking part of all. Mistakes don't always come from things that are too strange. And sometimes they come from things that feel so familiar. We stop questioning them altogether. So, if, in the past, a single detail was enough to make us misunderstand a real creature, how many things today are we seeing every day without ever truly understanding them? Maybe the problem isn't that the world is too complicated. Maybe it's that we're too quick to believe we've already figured it out. None of these creatures were ever myths. They were real people, simply didn't have the knowledge to understand what they were seeing. And if that's happened before, what makes us so certain we're not doing the same thing today? So here's the question. Which one of these feels the most impossible to you? And if you saw it in real life, would you even recognize it for what it truly is?